Okay, we're recording. I was looking forward to what I think we're going to do next, which is, how come it's not? See that little delay there? That's interesting. I was looking forward to a little bit to what I think we're going to do next, which is Romans. It's a nice follow-on to Acts because Romans was written probably from Corinth on Paul's towards the close of Paul's third missionary journey as he anticipates going to Rome. So a lot that he says in Rome to the Roman church is on his mind while he's on that third journey, having just spent 3 years at Ephesus. But anyway, I was thinking about Romans 8. So I'm reading through this, and there's a statement, I use the phrase the history of redemption all the time. And it's like the word salvation or son of God or any of these other terms. You can use them so much and you would just assume that people know what it is, that we all mean the same thing when we hear these terms. And I've found over and over again that that's not the case. I remember I was teaching something when I was on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ at Michigan State in the 90s. There was, class of 40 adults. I almost said kids. I apologize. Sitting there, 18 to 22. And I was talking about whatever, and I used the word apostle because, it's just a common Christian word. And at the end of it, one of the girls raised her hand and said, "What's an apostle?" And that's when I went, okay, you can't assume that anybody knows anything about this stuff. And you have to explain yourself, even to the point of other people might think it's insulting to explain what we think of as such obvious terms or usages. Anyway, the history of redemption. There's a statement in Romans 8, which is interesting. I consider the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. So it's this forward-looking, anticipatory mindset from Corinth, probably on the third journey in the heat of battle with everything that's going on. Do you roughly agree with me, Pastor, on the timeline here? Okay. For the anxious longing of the creation, look at the scope of his idea of redemption, his vision, his understanding of what redemption is. The anxious longing of the creation waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. So he uses these expressions like the revealing of the sons of God without explaining what he means by that. But they're kind of equivalent terms. There's the great day coming, which he now uses different phrases to refer to, and that's one of them. For the creation was subjected to futility. I presume he means the fall, the giving over, reprobation, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself also will be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. That's 4 uses of the word creation in a statement about redemption. That's his scope. The created order will be redeemed, and our redemption is a part of that. It's a microcosm of that. It's just one of the infinite number of redemptive acts that God brings about in his redeeming of his creation. Not only this, but also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves grown within ourselves, waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons. There's the second expression. The redemption of the body. There's the third expression. So I think he means roughly the same thing. We're not going to get into it now because we're not studying Romans, but I'm interested in that last phrase, the redemption of the body, because there he finally uses the word redemption. So what is he referring to when he says the phrase redemption of the body? It's his roundabout expression for what? The resurrection. That's right. He calls it the redemption of the resurrection of your body is your body being redeemed. And you are not redeemed. You are not, how do I say this carefully? You are not fully redeemed. How do I say this? Short of a redeemed body. How do I say that without being
I think you have to say, when you look at salvation, redemption, you're looking at the process. You have been redeemed, you are being redeemed, and you will be.
Yes. So there's this great day, but that's the great day, which we now have some sort of seal or guarantee of it today. But the great day is this day of redemption, which we'll now get into. So I was just watching a monster movie. And
Redemption, the word itself means to be bought out of a marketplace.
One part of it, the other one means to be bought at a payment of a ransom. Neutron is the payment of a ransom. And Egregio is to be bought on.
it's been a long time since I looked at it, but I'll take both your words for it.
You know
at this
which
point.
word is there by any chance?
No, we can look at it in a second, though. It's,
Decorate bird.
yeah, 8, what is it? 8. Look at that. Go. That's the wrong one. 8:23. Okay, anyway, so this is the latest diagram that I made. Kind of the history of redemption. So the arrow really is a timeline. And it's a subset. It's not all the things that have happened. I mean, if you're going to put all the things that happened in the history of redemption on a timeline, you need a you'd need a timeline many, many thousands of miles long. Anyway, we start with Moses, which is fulfillment. You've heard me use these terms before. Of course, the arrival of Moses was the fulfillment of the covenant promise with Abraham. And you see the books that recount fulfillment. Of course, in the case of, I thought I put Genesis up there. I didn't. Whoops. That's the last thing I did. Look at that. I changed it this morning. So there's Moses, which is fulfillment. So all of Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, that's all fulfillment of a covenant promise made to Abraham 400 years over, well, by then, over 400 years earlier. Anyway, we fast forward now. I left out David and a lot of other things to the prophets because I'm mainly interested in the Luke Acts timeline. The prophets, which contain promise and anticipation. There are warnings and promises, and then there's this sense of anticipation about when it is that God is going to fulfill that which He promised. And so here's some books. It's not all of them. All of the prophetic books are promise, warning, anticipation, and so forth. Then we move into fulfillment again with the first, what I'm calling the first appearing here. You can use all kinds of expressions there if you want. The birth of Jesus, the messianic arrival, whatever you want to call it. I called it the first appearing, which is a period of anticipation, announcement by Jesus Himself. The time is fulfilled. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent and believe the gospel. Jesus said that. He was announcing. So you have the first appearing, which is the substance of the Gospels, and to a certain extent Acts because of chapter 1, because the ascension of Jesus occurs in Acts chapter 1. So that's the pivot point there. Then we have a period of reflection and proclamation, which are tied together, of course. The proclamation is a proclamation that reflects on the first appearing and how that which was spoken of through the prophets is fulfilled. That's the proclamation in Acts. If you go back and look at the 5 or 6 proclamations, 2 by Peter, 2 or 3 by Paul, that plus his own conversion stories, that's what you're going to see. So that's the first appearing, and then the reflection and proclamation of it, which leads now also into anticipation of the second appearing of the Messiah, when he will claim his rule, when he will claim his kingdom here on earth. And that's, of course, fulfillment. So we already have the promise. We have a proclamation based on reflecting on the events of the first appearing, and then an anticipation of his return, his second appearing. And we live in the period between the 2 appearings, when this proclamation is going out, and there's this anticipation, which is embedded in the letters, even 2,000 years ago. This sense of anticipation, particularly 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, Jude, 1 Peter. Actually, I should have put 2 Peter in there too, because it's even more so. I did this too quick. Some in Hebrews, but all of these books are energized with the sense of anticipation of the return of the king, which is the second appearing. And it is in the another point to make about that. Look at the whatever color you want to call this. Acts, look at Acts. Acts participates, recounts, has subject matter of the first appearing, of the reflection, proclamation, anticipation of the second, reflection and proclamation of the first appearing, and anticipation of the second. And then also in those proclamations, there's the anticipation of the one who will come to judge the living and the dead, to use Paul's language in Acts chapter 17 in Athens. So all three, first appearing, the period between the two appearings, and this anticipation of the second appearing. The point being, here's the redemption of the body at the second appearing. These are the various ways you can refer to that second appearing, or things that happen coincident with the second appearing, the most important of which for our purposes, for our lives, is the redemption of the body, as Paul called it in Romans chapter 8. But in various other places, it's the day of the Lord, the day of judgment, the day of salvation, the day of redemption. I left one out. The day, Hebrews. All the more as you see the day drawing near, it's just the day. That's how significant that day is. And the blessed hope and appearing of our great God and Savior, Titus. I just shortened it to the appearing, but it's also called the blessed hope. So, and then an entire book of Revelation. So anyway, that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the history of redemption. It's all folded, it's all fused in and interwoven, not just in the narratives of the whole Bible, but in the letters as well. It's all just in there. It's in the proclamation. It's in, it's in the exhortation to the churches as they look forward. There's always this anticipatory looking forward, both in the exhortation and in the proclamation. So I don't know if that's helpful, but. Fulfillment of promise. So we have the guarantee, we have the promise. So let's just go back to John. My father has many mansions. If I go away, I prepare a place for you. I will return. However, he says that. That's a straightforward promise right in front of them that they could hold on to, and that got written down. So now we can participate in that hope as well. But that's just from John, which I haven't even studied for a long time. But they're all over the place like that.
How does that relate to Moses? Moses is fulfilled. Is that what you were asking about?
Yes, Moses is the fulfillment of a covenant promise made to, I'm just illustrating promise, anticipation, announcement, fulfillment, reflection, proclamation. This history of redemption, the history of redemption is full of this cyclical, every single bit of it. That's yeah, the Mosaic covenant is on the same line as the second appearing and points toward it. You do not get to the second appearing without going through the Mosaic covenant by decree from God.
I don't even get to it.
Yeah, I can do that. I got to change a couple things.
I think it also helped you get through the Abrahamic covenant without.
He was on here, but I didn't have room for him. Yeah. I also left out another big one that I left out, David. Yeah. Those are not big factors in Luke Acts, either one of them, but Moses is. Moses is a big deal in Acts because it's precisely what they view as the desecration of the traditions of Moses that got Jesus, Peter, Stephen, and Paul, from a human perspective, in trouble. Okay. I hope that was helpful for something. If not, you can just nod condescendingly and say, oh, that was great, Gary. Okay.
You don't know which word it is.
Yeah.
Means to reset the payment of the ransom. You will be, I think it's subjective. I can't remember all my.
Is that the Ruth? Is that the Boaz? Is that the Boaz Ruth usage? Is that the Boaz Ruth usage? Boaz. Well, anyway, okay.
Yeah, but Bill, this is not, this is New Testament Greek. It means there's two Greek-
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to look it up in the,
One that Brian talked about,
Yeah.
the original, or
Yeah.
the original.
you'd have to look it up in the Septuagint and see what,
Well, we're trying to do the most popular.
this is real.
It's basic means release that payment of ransom.
Okay. This is really geeking out on Greek, so. Okay, back to Acts chapter 9:40.
I wish I could say I was sorry
For what?
for bringing that up.
No, that's a good point.
No.
It's either one or the other, and they really aren't exclusive. Because when you buy a slave, you pay for the slave. You pay for the slave, bought us out of the slave market, you also redeemed us as a payment of ransom.
Speaking of bought slaves who were bought out of the slave situation, there's one right there in front of us, Claudius. We'll use Lysias. So who's this guy? Anybody remember who he is? He's the Lysias? She got it.
Oh, you're correct. Claudius accused. Okay.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, so he's a tribune. He's in charge of the forces in the Antonia fortress, which is attached to the temple. So he would have, if there's 1,000 there, he would have 10 centurions running the troops, 2 of which are going to be involved in this story right here. Anyway, he writes a letter to the governor, who down the line is is a follow-on to Pontius Pilate, procurator, I think is the word that's used there. Claudius Lysias is a chiliarch, which is the Greek word for 1,000, chiliarchus. Felix is a procurator or governor of a Roman province, which is Judea, which is not an honor. You often get made a Roman province because you're troublemakers. And they just say, we're done with this, and they just move in, take over. And that's what happened with Judea in 6 AD, which instituted the poll tax, the tribute, the tax on individuals in Judea, which begins to foment a revolutionary spirit in the people, which will eventually lead to the Jewish revolt in 66, about 10 years hence from this story. Okay, so he writes this letter because he's anticipating revolt level behavior on the part of the Jews because they're going to try to assassinate Paul. And he's not going to let that happen, not because he likes Paul, but because he likes his job and his life. So he wants to get him into what we could call Roman territory, out of Judea as fast as possible. So he's not even going to wait till the next day. He finds out about the plot from who? Who tells him about the plot? Paul's nephew. What's his name? We don't know his name. His name is nephew. So he immediately sets it in motion to get Paul out of. He now knows that Paul is a Roman, so he really can't let this happen. Not that he has any particular camaraderie with Paul because he's a Roman. He just has to get rid of the problem. So this is his letter. This is interesting in its own right. So he writes the letter. They're going to leave at night. They're going to go to Caesarea. Let's just say a couple things about the letter. I told you about the most excellent part of this. We have a little clue potentially about the identity. What sort of person Theophilus, who is the recipient of this 2-volume work, what sort of person he was, if that term was used of the equestrian order of rulers like governors of the equestrian order, then maybe you have a clue there as far as Theophilus, what sort of person he was, because Luke calls him most excellent Theophilus at the beginning of the book of Luke, which is interesting. So it's used twice. This expression is used twice in biblical narrative. Once to the recipient of Luke and Acts, and once to a Roman governor, and the Roman governor of Judea, which is interesting. But we can't say anything for certain. When this man, Paul, was arrested by the Jews and was about to be slain by them, that's accurate. I came up to them, White Knight, it's going to shade the truth here a little bit, with troops and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman. Well, is that what happened? Yeah, when did he learn he was a Roman? What was he about to do when he learned he was a Roman? He's about to scourge him. Yeah. So he just, it's so true to life. This is exactly the kind of thing that this guy would do when he writes the letter to the Roman governor. So Luke, good on you. That's, and also, that's right. Now, also notice, he's not claiming to get the letter verbatim. He wrote a letter having this form. He wrote a letter that had this, that was like this, right? But boy, some of the little details in here, how he massages just enough the narrative so he doesn't come off looking like he's telling on himself at all. And it's self-aggrandizing, right? He wants to portray himself like he's the great rescuer of a Roman. Oh my goodness, there's a Roman being beaten in the temple precincts. Let's go down and save the Roman. Hooray for the Romans, all for one and one for all. No, that's not what happened. If you remember, they started screaming that Paul in the town had brought Trophimus. Paul was desecrating the temple because he brought an Ephesian Gentile in to the inner court. And they just started beating him. And they probably would have finished the job like they did Stephen. So he just wants to end any possibility of a revolt, of any trouble, insurrectionist trouble. So he comes rushing in with a couple of hundred soldiers, and he just ends the thing and gets the troublemaker out of the thing. Then he has the little encounter on the stairs where Paul tries to tell him he's a Roman, but he doesn't get the hint. But he lets him talk to the Jews to try to calm this down. That just makes things worse. So now he can't figure out what's going on, why this guy is, what trouble he caused. He assumes that he's a troublemaker, that he did something to cause trouble, but he doesn't know what it is. So to get the answer, he's not going to interrogate the accusers. He's going to examine, that's the word that Luke uses. He's going to examine the victim by scourging. And that probably got answers. Like after, my guess is most of the time you just had to, all they had to do was hear the whip. And then they just start bawling their eyes out and confessing to anything and everything they can confess to. So that's about to happen when Paul says to the centurion, you know, you're about to scourge a Roman. That's how he stops it. So everybody backs off. The centurion goes and lectures the tribune. What do you think you're doing? This man is a Roman. And so and then the air gets taken out of everything. And that's when the tribune begins to operate by Roman principles instead of by sort of dictatorial tribune principles. Because he would have had a lot of latitude with the Jews. We didn't have any latitude with the Roman.
No-win situation.
Yes, that's right.
He's open to this charge. What were you doing messing around in the temple with the Jewish system?
Yeah.
He said, well, he was a Roman citizen, even though he doesn't find it out later. That gets him off the hook because rescuing Romans is more important than pleasing Jews.
Yeah, unless they desecrated the temple, which was the only condition which allowed them to execute the death penalty, which is why they wanted it here. The desecration of the temple thing was their best shot at getting rid of Paul. Short of it, just a simple assassination attempt, which after it failed, that's all they're going to do, is going to assassinate him now. So, yeah, back to the letter, thank you. Wanting to ascertain the charge for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council, which he did. And I found him to be accused over questions about their law, religious law, Mosaic law, but under no accusation deserving death or imprisonment. He only cares about Roman law. I want a specific accusation, and I want to see the evidence for the specific accusation. Now, if you can produce evidence that he brought a Gentile into the inner court, that's something. That is something. But that gets lost. You're never going to read the name Trophimus again. It was a pretext, and now whether he's even in the city, I don't know, but that part of the story disappears forever. It's never brought up again, even when they all go to Felix to testify against Paul, to accuse Paul. So this is very, very similar to Jesus, right? You once again, you have in the case of Lysias, you have the first Roman trying to what's I don't know how you say it, not necessarily get Paul off the hook, but just what's the word for it? Pilate attempted to release Jesus and failed. He sends him to Herod, who has no interest in finding him guilty of anything. So he goes back to Pilate, who again attempts to release him 3 times. But what has he done wrong? Says the Roman. But with the shouting of the Jews, he finally relents. So there's again this similarity of story between Jesus and Paul here, where the Roman, the Gentile, is treating Paul fairly and trying to what essentially will amount to have him released. It's not the first time. If you remember back, Gallio, the what do they call, proconsul of Achaia, which is where Corinth is. He was in Corinth. He has no interest in the Jewish accusations when they did it the first time. They made basically the same accusations against Paul in Corinth, and they ran him to the judgment seat. And Gallio said, I have no interest in this religious disputes. Jews, get out of here. And he drove them from the judgment seat. And so they beat Paul right in front of him, and he didn't care about that either. He just didn't care. But anyway, the point is, the Gentiles are repeatedly portrayed throughout Luke and Acts as in a positive manner in some way.
As compared with the Jewish Judaism.
So much so that the term "the Jews" in the Gospels is by itself, in and of itself, practically a pejorative term.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have to make a distinction. I think part of the reason that this was done is that you have to make a distinction now between Romans, Jews, and Christians. Because that's part of the book of Acts, is to make a division between Judaism and Christianity. And here you see Christians acting completely different from the Jews and completely different from the Romans. And so it's part of that.
And then somehow,
Through Acts to separate the three.
and somehow out of that, you have to create and maintain one united people of God that consists of all of them
Absolutely.
in the same church.
Uh-huh.
And that's Paul's.
Why you see the coming, some Jews being saved. That's why you see some Romans being saved. That's why you see this.
Are you using Romans roughly equivalent to Greek speakers?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the Romans who are the Romans in Acts? I think we only know of for sure 2. Paul, anybody know the other one?
This,
Specifically called a Roman?
This Lysias.
No, Christians.
Christian. Luke.
Okay, that's a good point. He became a Christian, so eventually you have another Roman. Luke has never, Cornelius, Luke has never said, I presume he is, but that's presumption. But we don't have any way of knowing for sure. My hunch is that Paul gathered around him Romans, so that when he goes to these, because his pattern was to go to Roman colonies, right? He would go to.
First he went to the synagogues.
He wanted to go to Greek-speaking synagogues in Roman colonies where he could have access to God-fearing Greek-speaking Gentiles. That was his pattern. In these cities, Lystra, Iconium, Pisidian Antioch, Troas, that was just a port city. Over here, Philippi, Thessalonica, Corinth, Ephesus, Syrian Antioch, of course. These are all Roman colonies. That's a hefty portion of the number of cities that he visited. So my hunch is he took Romans with him if he could. We don't know about Titus. Titus is this shadowy figure that's mentioned in Galatians and then in the closing of a couple of letters. And what did I say? And Titus, yeah. And then of course, the book of Titus, yeah, right. But he doesn't appear in Acts. But my hunch is If I had to guess, most of these guys were Romans, including Luke. But anyway, the one that we're missing, once we include Cornelius, Cornelius, Paul, and who is the only other Roman Christian mentioned in, Silas. Silas was a Roman. He got beat in Corinth, in Philippi with Paul and got thrown in prison. That's the little story of the jailer where the prison opens and the jailer gets converted. Yeah, that was Paul and Silas. Okay, anyway. Let's see, where am I? Let's finish this off. We are finishing this today. It's only 9:55.
Finishing the letter.
Yeah, we're not going to finish Acts probably. Yeah. When I was informed that there would be a plot against the man, I sent him to you at once. That's true. Also instructing his accusers to bring charges against him before you. So he has told the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council, this is now out of my hands. He's going to Caesarea. If you have a problem, if you want to make accusations, I wash my hands of it. You have to go to Caesarea to do it. Probably hoping that they would just not go, just, forget about it, but that's not what happened. So Caesarea, now let's keep going. Let's read the rest of this. So the soldiers, in accordance with their orders, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. Antipatris comes from two Greek,
That place.
let's leave the Greek alone. Antipatris. Once I start saying it, I have trouble stopping. But thank you. But the next day, leaving the horsemen to go on with him, they returned to the barracks. We'll get back to that in a second. When these had come to Caesarea, delivered the letter to the governor, they also presented Paul to him. The governor is Felix. When he had read it, he asked from what province he was. And when he learned that he was from Cilicia, he said, I will give you a hearing after your accusers arrive also, giving orders for him to be kept in Herod's praetorium. Caesarea was built by Herod the Great. So there's a palace there for Herod that then became the Roman center of administration for Palestine. So why does he care about why does he ask what province is he from? Well, he doesn't want the problem either, right? If he can possibly get out of there, he understands. He's running afoul of, here come the Sanhedrin. Here comes the locals that are angry, who have power. They can go to Rome and file complaints, which they will do, which will cause Felix, not over this, but over something else, but which will cause Felix to be recalled to Rome, which will then bring in Festus, the next governor. He knows the politics of the thing. So if he can get rid of this problem, he will happily do so. So he wants to know what province he's from, because he wants to know whether it's a Roman province, a province controlled by Rome directly, or a client kingdom. Judea is a Roman province. Galilee was a client kingdom. Anybody know the king who was in charge of Galilee during the time of Jesus' ministry? Antipas. Antipas. Yes, withstanding all. I remember the Greek on it. Yeah, Antipas. Agrippa was 41 to 44. And then Agrippa II is the one that's now in the 50s. But Antipas is the Herod that you see all the time, just simply referred to Herod as Herod in Luke. Yeah.
What happened to the 40 people that vowed they never eat or drink?
Yeah, they're going to have to get out of their vow, ain't they?
They
So-
started Jenny Craig.
So let's let's look at that. So that's actually an important point. So what happened here? Luke says that he was taken from Jerusalem. There's Caesarea, north side of what territory? Samaria. That's right. The Jews ain't going into Samaria. Not to mention the fact that Caesarea is a largely Gentile city. There are Jews there, but it's a largely Gentile city. Antipatris, and this place right here, look where it is. Why do the horsemen get them as far as Antipatris and then turn back and let them go on foot the rest of the way?
There's less chance of a raid.
They don't have any ambush once they get to Samaria. So that's what they're doing. They just accompany to get him into Samaria. They accompany him and then they turn back because they got to get back to the Antonia fortress unless there's problems back there. They've already cut 200 soldiers loose. So assuming there was 1,000, they're down to 800. Now he's left 70 horsemen. So he needs to get the horsemen back as fast as he possibly can. Reading between the lines. So he gets to Antipatris. The horsemen go back to Jerusalem, which is to say the Antonia fortress. And then they proceed on to Caesarea. This is largely Gentile territory. And then once he gets to Caesarea, he's under the control of the Romans again. Okay. I'm reading my notes for those of you not listening on the Zoom feed. There's nobody on the Zoom feed. I'm way behind in my notes. Wow. I just did all of that, skipping over 2 pages of notes. Let's see. So it's about 27 miles. This is the kind of stuff I geek out about. It's about 27 miles from here to here. They're going to do that on foot. That's a long night. That's a long night. Say 2 miles an hour, maybe 3.
It wasn't the trip at night from Jerusalem to Antipatris? Is that the night trip?
Yeah, but you're going to get, I mean, okay, yeah, so maybe once they get there, they don't care. It's the daytime. But yeah, that's a good point. So he can't get out of it. He finds out that Paul is a Roman. There's not a client king. So why, did I complete this sentence? That Pontius Pilate, when he found out that Jesus was from Galilee, what was his next act?
Send him to Herod.
Herod was in town. Oh, goody. The client king, he can handle this. And so he sends him to Herod, who also doesn't want anything to do with it, who sends him back. But Herod appreciated the gesture on the part of Antipas. And why can't I say that one? Antipas. I know. I just have trouble with that word. He appreciated the gesture. So from that day on, they became friends. Because maybe there was tension between these two rulers. But this, Herod appreciated the fact that Pontius Pilate was acknowledging probably in some way his authority. So he, they have a better relationship after that. I don't know. I'm just guessing. So Felix just has to deal with it, which he's not going to do. So Paul's in for a long stay. He doesn't want to try him. He doesn't want to let him, he can't just let him go at the risk of basically fomenting a revolt by the Jews. So he does the next best thing. He just kind of holds on to him like a long awaiting trial kind of thing, Yeah, bail was not really an option for those guys. Felix was governor 52 to 59 AD. We're at 50, actually 58. I don't know why I put 59, it's 58. These are all guesswork. This is all guesswork anyway. We're at about 56, 57 right here. And so in 58, Felix will be recalled. And there'll be a new governor. And so Paul is stuck with that situation. And that's what you're reading. That's what you're going to read about in 24. So Paul is going to testify before Felix. It's not really going to go anywhere. They have to wait for the accusers to get there. It's not really going to go anywhere. It's not settled. So the only ones who know how this is going to turn out are Paul and God himself, because God has already told Paul directly, Jesus told him directly, standing at his side, that he will see Rome. So it's probably in Paul's mind beginning to shape up how he's going to get to Rome. And I'm sure, it's an interesting thing. He will eventually appeal to Caesar to be able to not have to go back to Jerusalem. And I'm sure that as he was thinking through what to do next in that situation, because by then it's going to be Festus and Herod Agrippa II and Bernice, his wife, and Drusilla. No, not Drusilla. She's the wife of this guy. But, he's thinking through this, and he knows the vision. And so when he says, I appeal to Caesar, he knows exactly what he's doing. Oh, this is how I'm getting to Rome. So he probably was able to say that without any conflict at all. That's too far into the future. So now this chapter leaves off with this anticipation of the accusers appearing, which happens 5 days later. A little side note on, so remember the backstory here. Claudius Lysias, Claudius is his nomen, his Roman name, indicating something about how he got his freedom. He was a freedman who rose to the position of tribune, Claudius Lysias. Lysias is his Greek name. He sends one of those great moments in his ironic moments in history. He sends a freeborn Roman, Paul, the freedman, former slave, sends the freeborn Roman Paul to another former slave / freedman, Felix. And it's, you just have to, Paul was at the center of so many currents that come in. There's just so much that comes into play with the life and times of the Roman Empire, the Greco-Roman Empire in the first century. Like, for example, when he went through Philippi, and we talked about the Battle of Philippi, what a key battle that was. You know, it's just so much history is flowing in and out of these areas in the life of Paul. And this is an example of it. And I'm sure none of this was lost on Paul. Anyway, in regard to Felix, the former slave, you know, you can buy your freedom, you can be freed, but in the back of the Romans' mind, you were always once a slave, right? I don't think you ever, the class-oriented, the social status, the caste system of the Roman Empire was so powerful. I'm sure they never could look at you without at least having in the back of their mind that you were once a slave. And so Tacitus, who was a first century Greek historian, Roman historian, who wrote contemporaneously with Josephus in the second half of the first century, which is our time period here, a little bit after this. So here's our timeline. So these guys wrote here after the fall of Jerusalem. We're talking right here. Anyway, Tacitus the Roman, the aristocratic Roman historian, says of this former slave turned governor, who was a brutal governor, he exercised the power of a king with the mind of a slave. So to a Tacitus, his behavior was explained by the fact that he used to be a slave. You never get past it.
Compare that with 2B, 24, 2B.
Verse 24?
Chapter 24, 2.
Oh, verse 2.
We have three, this is the I can't lawyer speaking.
2b, Tertullus began to accuse him.
Since we have through your attended.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Let's do that much and then we'll quit. All right, so here comes the gang, the Sanhedrin. Yeah. After 5 days, the high priest, or Ananias, came down. We already talked about him. Very corrupt high priest. Remember, high priests are political appointments. The Romans selected the high priest, so you probably didn't get to be a candidate unless, you certainly weren't anti-Roman if you became high priest. Came down with some soldiers, with an attorney named Tertullus. They brought charges to the governor, Felix, against Paul. And after Paul had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying to the governor, now listen to the flattery. Since we have through you attained much peace, and since by your providence reforms are being carried out for this nation, we acknowledge this in every way and everywhere, most excellent Felix, there's the expression again, with all thankfulness, Yeah, this guy's within a year or two of getting recalled because of complaints by the Jews. So that's his, obligatory, flattering, fake, I already used the word flattering. What do you call that? Groveling, just groveling flattery is all it is. And everybody knows it. So Tertullus, all we know about him is what's right here. He's got this Greek name. So is he Jewish? It never says. So wouldn't it be ironic if the Jews hired a Roman Gentile to accuse Paul of having desecrated the temple by bringing a Gentile into it? If this guy wasn't a Jew. We don't know. This is all you get.
And this guy Felix was taken down because of his brutality.
Yeah.
So he had no love for anybody. That's why he was thrown out, was because he was just too brutal. And so he had no love for the Jews, no love for anybody but himself.
Yeah, the Palestine or Judea was a second-rate Roman province. You have Roman provinces like Ephesus, Corinth, Philippi. You know, you have those kinds of Roman provinces, Antioch. But Judea is not that. Judea's, you know, there's no Romans, hardly no Romans there. It's just a troublemaking vassal state. So he doesn't like these people. He's going to do what he can get away with. And he couldn't manage the situation like Herod did. Herod the Great was pretty effective at managing these, you know, he had these building projects and he could do all this stuff. And so they could see, I don't know, they could see some benefit and so forth. But this guy did not work the politics very well. He doesn't want anything to do with this situation. There's nothing to gain here. The only thing he can do is turn Paul over to the Jews. But then if he does that, he runs the risk of running afoul of Roman law. He turns them loose, then he foments an insurrection in his own territory. Okay, Ananias, I thought I talked about him before. Did I talk about him? High priest 47 to 58. Yeah, okay. Very pro-Roman. That's why he's here. He's going to be assassinated in 66 at the very beginning of the Jewish war. They settle scores quick. All right. Enough of that. Huh? Yeah, and then 24. See what I want to close with. So the high priest comes in person. There's some people missing from the proceedings who are very important, who should have been here. Where are the Ephesian Jews who accused Paul in the first place? They're nowhere to be found. Where is Trophimus? These guys weren't there in the temple. They're not even, there's no eyewitnesses. There's just these people who, as far as Felix knows, just were beating this guy in the temple precincts. But there's no evidence. The original accused, they're not even the accusers, which Paul's going to point out in a little bit. This isn't even a right Roman trial, Paul's going to say, because the accusers aren't even here. These are just stand-ins for the accusers. The reason that the reason the high priest is there is probably, they're not so much asking for a ruling, they're asking for a favor. So this is one powerful person, the high priest, probably trying to, you know, massage another powerful person, Felix, and just giving him his way. And then we can all go home. So an attorney here is,
Especially looking at the situation there where Felix is in trouble with the Roman government.
Yeah.
At this time.
That's right. This is ongoing, yeah.
And he doesn't want another,
No.
he doesn't want another report have to send out anything.
Yeah, he's
Give it
gonna-
over.
He's going to do nothing.
There
yeah.
you go.
So the attorney here is not our attorneys, not like one of our attorneys. This attorney would be some kind of expert on Roman law. So I guess to that extent, he's an attorney. And then rhetoric, and you can see it here, the flowery, ridiculous rhetoric. And then some kind of expert on the Mosaic law. I don't know. Does he do this for a living? I don't know how that would work.
You look at the accusations, he accuses them on Roman law level, Jewish law level,
Yeah.
and then God's law level. All three areas he accuses.
So there's a long statement by, Luke records this long statement. So either he was there or, because it points out that he was allowed to have friends. So either he was there or he had access to somebody who was there. Because this is a very long recitation of And here he doesn't say statements having this form like this. He just records the statement. So I don't know how that works. Anyway, we'll stop there. About 3. We're back to most excellent, Felix. Okay. We did finish 23. I think we did that in 2 weeks too. Okay, thanks for joining.